That's one of the biggest issues people have with money is that they hang on to it so tightly because they've never had it. And even once they do have it, they feel like it could all go away tomorrow. So I still have to hang on to it so tightly. But the people that have the most joy with money, the people that have the most money, have an abundance mindset. Their mindset is, well, I can just go make more money. That to me is a telltale sign that you'll never really fail if you have that kind of mindset.
On today's show, we have George Kamel on the show. He is a Ramsey personality. He is a personal finance expert. George went from negative net worth to a millionaire in under 10 years. And since 2013, he has served on the Ramsey team, speaking across the country, and now frequently co-hosts multiple podcasts, and now an author with the book behind you, man. I'm excited to have you. I'm excited to dive into your journey, man. I want to start early on in your journey. What are some of the early memories that you have about money and how that shaped your perspective on money throughout your life?
Man, well, it's an honor to be here. You've had some greats on here, and I'm excited to join the list. I was just listening to
Absolutely.
your incredible conversation with Joshua Fields Milburn, one of my friends, and I can't top him, so I'll just try to do my best. But
Yeah, you're in your own lane, man.
yeah, my upbringing was strange in that I grew up Arabic Baptist in an Irish Italian Catholic town outside of Boston, Massachusetts. So I was in this Middle Eastern bubble. My parents were immigrants from the Middle East. I was born in the States. And so I was kind of stuck between these two cultures, wanting to adapt to the American culture, but also loving these Middle Eastern roots and this amazing community that my family had. So my earliest memory of money was my dad giving me $1 to go up to random people at the Arabic church and say something in Arabic that I had no clue. I had no clue what it meant, but I knew it was going to get a laugh and it was going to be irreverent, and I knew I'd be $1 richer. And so that was my first memory of like making money and feeling good while getting to do something that I didn't realize was my passion, which is to entertain, to make people laugh, to connect. And so that was my earliest memory beyond, getting my first job and realizing, oh, I'm in control of this. This is cool. If I can just go work more, I can make more and I can do things without having to ask mommy and daddy for allowance or a Christmas gift.
Yeah, you've done a bunch of different side hustles throughout your journey, and I'm excited to dive into that and how you got into working with the Ramsey and everything else, and throughout your journey. You grew up in Boston, right? And like you said, a background that not a lot of people had. What was the money story? What was your beliefs about around money? What did you tell yourself? What was society telling you about money, and how has that changed over time?
Mhm. Well, my parents being Middle Eastern, my parents were, fairly frugal. Coming from an Egyptian and Syrian background, they loved getting a deal. So I remember clipping coupons out of the Sunday paper, and that was kind of our shopping list. We're like, all right, here's where we're going to go, here's what we're going to get. And so I love looking through the flyers on the Sunday paper with my parents and cutting those out. And there's no more joy than my dad gets than getting a deal on something, even if it's like 14 gallons of mustard. We're like, what are we going to do with all this? He's like, I don't know, but I got a great deal on it. And so
Yeah.
that was kind of my upbringing was as long as you get a good deal, it's a good purchase. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of how I in my childhood I was raised. And then as I got into high school and college, I followed the normal path, which was get good grades. They weren't militant about it, but my brother and I, we got all, A's and B pluses. If I got a B minus, I was like really down on myself. So grades were very important. And then all of that led to, well, you got to get into a good college and get a good education. And what I didn't realize was we didn't have the money to pay for it. They
Yeah.
just kept saying, "Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. We got it." And I thought, man, they must have some secret trust fund money going on around here. And little did I know it was going to be, parent plus loans and subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans. And so I graduated with $36,000 in student loan debt,
Mhm.
and I had credit cards because I had heard, well, you got to get the credit score. And so that was the mindset I had was you got to follow this primrose path that's been laid out before us. Do everything your parents told you to do, get good grades, go to a good college, get the credit card, get the credit score, and your life is going to be fine. And here I found myself at 23 over a decade ago going, I'm cynical, I'm anxious, I'm frustrated, I'm stressed. How is this the American dream that I've spent the last, 10, 15 years chasing down? And so that led me to kind of a dark place, wondering how the heck am I going to get out of this and what's the right way to do it? Because this American dream has turned into the American nightmare.
It's so important. A line in your book, you said, I assumed you were either born into wealth or you'd never have it. That's why when I pictured a millionaire in my mind, I never pictured myself. And I'll say this from going through the book, there's so many points throughout the book that I think so many people are going to resonate with, and so many quotes. And I have to say, it's so digestible, must I say, throughout the book.
Thank you.
I love the way you write, man. And for a first time author, it's amazing to see what you're putting into the world. Um, when throughout that period of time, you're leaving high school, you're going into college, what was going through your mind? Was it, and knowing that you're $36,000 in debt, like what is that first step first and foremost? And yeah, let's start there.
Well, I'm like many people, I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Some people have that thing where they're like, I'm going to go get my teaching degree and I'm going to be a teacher. I want to be a doctor. I was just a kind of a knucklehead, creative musician, video guy. And so I
Mhm.
was kind of this jack of all trades, master of none, wondering, I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess I'll get like a media. I thought I was going to go to film school,
Yeah.
and that was $200,000. And even back then, I realized that's a stupid idea. And so then I pivoted to go media communications. And so I ended up graduating with a communications degree, still not knowing. I still don't know what I want to do today, man. But there's a piece of it that we put so much pressure on these kids to have it figured out at 17 and then sign away their life to $150,000 in student loans to just fingers crossed, hope it all works out.
Yeah.
Hope you land a job that number one pays the bills and number two that you actually enjoy. And too often we see both of those things not happen. They're not making the money they thought they would, and they're doing something they hate because they just sort of stumbled into it at 17. So that's kind of where I landed. I graduated, I still didn't know what I really wanted to do. I was all over the place just doing side hustles, making money, having a good time, but I didn't really have that deep purpose of, oh, this is what I need to point all the guns at. And so I got an internship working for this guy named Dave Ramsey, actually working for one of the personalities, doing social media, email marketing. That was kind of my background and my speed. And so that was my forte. And so that's how I got in the door here at Ramsey back in 2013. And for, the first 6 years of my career, I was just social media guy, email marketing guy. And it was a blast doing that, getting to really soak into the mission. But as part of that, we went through Financial Peace University in our onboarding when I first started. And so that really changed my paradigm. I had heard of Dave Ramsey, but I
Mhm.
never followed the principles. And now that I needed the principles because I was $40,000 in debt at 23, I
Yeah.
went, I'll give this a shot. I'll cut up the cashback card. I'll cut up my Amex Delta Sky Miles card that I thought somehow was going to be my path to success. And that was the start of something beautiful.
Yeah, it really, really is powerful. And I know that you worked at Apple as a creative as well. And funny enough, I worked at Apple in retail as well.
Yes.
So when I was going through it, I was like, Apple was such a great place that I enjoyed working at, but it wasn't the thing that really propelled me. I didn't feel like I had a purpose just with you. And you've done a bunch of different. You've done Uber. You've done a bunch of different ways to make money, and you always found a way. I mean, I remember in 2016, you made about 30,000 just off side hustles, right? Like, what did doing side hustles teach you about yourself?
Well, number one, it helped me feel unstuck. A lot of people that are out there, they're going, well, James, if I could just make more money, man, I just don't get paid enough. So that's why I can't. I got to have the car payment because how am I going to save up and pay cash for a car? And once you realize that, number one, you can have an impact on the world, even if it's driving people around for Uber. Well, guess what? That person really needed a ride that day, and you got to step in and serve them in a really cool way and get paid for it. So even if it's not this deep seated passion, uh, you know, there's still so many ways to make money, to feel purposeful because you're not sitting at home watching the latest Netflix series, and to feel like I have control over my life. I have agency. And too many people out there have given up their agency because they're waiting on the next politician to save them. They're waiting on, well, once this toxic job thing's over, then I'll do something about my life. Too many people are waiting on a and then instead of going, I'm going to change something. The guy in the mirror is the solution, and if I can get a hold of that guy, we can do whatever we want. And that was the most freeing feeling, and side hustles were a part of that because I realized I wasn't limited by a $35,000 income when I could go make another 30 on nights and weekends as a young single guy. So that was really empowering to go like, now I can get a down payment on a house. I know I can go pay cash for that car. And a lot of that is just putting blinders on and not caring what other people think, which is a superpower in today's world, especially for us younger generations.
So very true. So very true. I always say like you have to get past the first beginning part of feeling like you look like a fool by doing different things and trying and putting yourself out there, because you will put yourself in a position to succeed, and you've done that in many different areas. A line in your book as well that comes up for me that I've said on this podcast more times than I can count is that it may not be your fault, but it's still your responsibility. And so many of us want to delay that responsibility by, like you just said, is putting it off of and then kind of experience. And when you first joined Ramsey, I know that you put yourself in a position to succeed and take responsibility by hosting the Battle of the Bands and actually putting yourself out there, right? I think for a lot of people, they don't allow themselves to put themselves out there, and so they don't get the opportunities in life. How can we put ourselves in a position to really create those opportunities? Because it seems like that's what you did when you first joined Ramsey and in every area of your life.
Yeah, man, you've done your research. You know the Battle of the Band story. That's very impressive.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I've had 6 jobs here at Ramsey, and so many people job hop to different companies. I just sort of accidentally job hopped within the same company,
Mm.
which was really powerful because, this place means a lot to me. I met my wife here. She still works here. And the people that I knew 10 years ago, many of them are still here. And there's some really deep friendships. And there's something special that happens when you commit to something for a long period of time. And many people are just going, hey, I'm going to go jump ship to this startup because it pays 5,000 more with these benefits. And instead, I just sort of planted my feet and went, if I just really focus on the thing in front of me and I excel at that, and then people see that, they're going to give you more opportunity. And so one thing I learned was don't be really good at something you hate because you will get pigeonholed into doing that thing. They're going to go, well, he's so great over here, and therefore it doesn't make sense to put him over here. So you have to find opportunities where you can do the thing you want to do and show people you've got what it takes. And man, some of those opportunities, it took a few years to convince someone to even give me a shot. And so for the leaders out there, give those people a shot. Be that person, because those are the most influential people in my life, are the leaders who stepped in and said, I see something in this guy. I know no one else may see it, but I'm putting my chips on the table going, I'm all in on George. And that is the kind of belief that is missing in today's world. And it's why people work for toxic environments and toxic bosses. We don't have leaders who really want to help people grow, not just do the job well and serve their leader. And so that was part of my career trajectory, was hosting Battle of the Bands, getting on stage, having other people notice, wow, he's got a gift there. I know he's this email marketing guy and social media guy. What if we could put him in front of a camera and on stages, and he could really help us elevate this place and make an impact for our fans? And so they gave me the shot. And so I had kind of an audition phase where they put me on the video channel for the Ramsey show to host the breaks in between. They put me on stages across America to see, can this guy carry an event and MC? And I wouldn't say it was great, James, but I would say it was good enough that they went, we're going to give him the job. And so that was my first foray into kind of doing a lot of on-camera work outside of, my past life as a musician.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you've had the experience because you were a musician. You've put yourself in a position. So, of course, doing that, it almost seemed like it was meant for you. And now you have your own YouTube channel and everything else that you're doing, multiple different podcasts. Like it makes sense that you're on camera, and it makes sense that you're doing it because you're very good at it. So, I want to dive into that belief because you brought that up. The belief is so important. I'm going to take a line from your book again. Building wealth starts with the belief that it's possible for you, regardless of where you're at, or the mistakes that you've made in the past. Belief is half the battle, and that's why I touch on this so much with my podcast. Is I think if we have a belief that is not possible, then we automatically create a limit for ourselves, and then it's not possible. So when did your belief shift from whether money was evil or money is it's not possible for me to realizing that it's a possibility?
Well, one huge component of that was letting go of my own belief system because
Hmm.
it wasn't working for me. The things I believed about money had not led me to the place I wanted to go.
Yep.
And therefore it was not serving me. And I had to go, all right, there's this proven plan that I've heard about called Financial Peace University and Ramsey's 7 baby steps. But
Mhm.
so many of us, myself included, are initially opt out and they go, well, that's not for me.
Yep.
That's for XYZ. That's for broke people. That's for people with money. I don't make enough money to do these steps. I make too much money to do these steps. It's so funny how there's a spectrum of people who opt out. And instead, I just went, all right, you have to get to a place of surrender where you go, I've had it. I'm at the end of my rope. I worked too hard to feel this broke. whatever's next has got to be better than what I've got going on. And so that surrender is really powerful, to just have the open hand and go, I'm willing to learn, teach me. And too many of us at 22 think we know everything because we saw a YouTube video and a TikTok and we're like, no, man, you got to buy the car for the write off. You don't understand. And in a very, as patient as I can be, I just go, man, you do what you want to do. This plan has really worked for me. And I remember being just like you, thinking I knew everything. And the older I get, the more I realize I don't know that much and that Google is my friend. And so I try to use that to avoid costly mistakes, because I think humility is one of the keys to building wealth, and pride is one of the keys to losing it very quickly. And that's what we're seeing today with a lot of these get rich quick schemes and buy my course. And man, you don't understand crypto. And there's so much greed, fear, and pride that is holding us back from true freedom, not just wealth, but just peace and freedom that I think we're all so desperate for.
So true. So true. I think the humility is such a important aspect, and it's a big part of this podcast, is bringing humility to the people that you may be a net worth millionaire, but you're still learning. And I like my position in this place is I'm always trying to learn from those ahead of me, because obviously the more that I recognize that I don't know, the more that I don't know. Like it's a continuous pattern of that. And I think it's a really important thing to touch on, as you said, is you have to let go of a current belief system to open up a new opportunity for a different belief system. So, what do you think are some beliefs that hold people back from, whether it's making more money or just creating a life of freedom?
Mm. Number one is the thing I mentioned in the book, which is I don't come from money and therefore I'll never have it.
Yep.
We are stuck in these generational cycles of not just poverty, but just bad mentalities around money of I'll always have a car payment. Well, you can't get ahead. You got to have the credit score to get the loan. You got to have, and the gotta have and I deserve are some of the most dangerous verbiage we can use as a society. And
Hmm.
so those are some real toxic beliefs, is that, well, my parents messed up. My parents got divorced, so therefore I'm going to get divorced. So what's the point of ever giving marriage a shot? My parents went through bankruptcy, so what's the point of ever trying to even get ahead with money? I'll never be a millionaire. And those beliefs, I believe they bleed into our daily actions. Why would you invest every single day if you don't think you'll ever build wealth? So what happens? You just don't invest. Why would you do a budget if you don't think it's going to lead to having margin with money and allowing you to reach your financial goals? You don't. You just sort of go, fingers crossed, I hope I have enough money at the end of the month. Woe is me, inflation, the boomers. And at the end of the day, it leaves you exhausted, and you drank this poison that's only holding you back. And so I was that guy who had drank all the poison, believed all the myths, and it took a while to just sort of deprogram all of that and unplug from this matrix that I had been a part of. And that's what I say in the book. In the very beginning, I say, this book is going to offend you. I'm going to say things in this book that are jarring, and I'm not trying to be some kind of shock jock author who's just saying controversial things. I'm saying that because I remember hearing these for the first time going, what? You can live without a credit score? This guy's insane.
Yeah.
And so there's so many beliefs that are tied to money principles that take a while to undo, because for 20 or 30 years, some people 40, 50 years, it's all they've known. And at the heart of that is hopelessness. Is they're saying it's not possible for me, and if someone else has it, well, they probably got it in an unfair way because they had some advantage or some privilege that I just don't have. And so I tell those people, you can go get yourself some privilege.
Mhm.
But sometimes it looks like the side hustle that you didn't want to do. Sometimes it looks like getting on a budget so that you can have privilege. And by privilege, they mean margin with their money and able to reach their financial goals without stress.
Yeah, yeah, it's so important. I know there's a line that I can't exactly remember from your book, but it's like the truth will set you free, but first it's going to piss you off, something like
Oh,
that.
yes. I opened a chapter with a quote. I think it's from Joe Kloss, who said
Yes.
that. And it was such a beautiful, poignant reminder about how the truth works. And truth is such a squishy word in today's world, right? It's like, well, I'm
Yeah.
living my truth. And, politics uses truth and lies to try to confuse us and get us to believe certain things. But at the heart of it, truth is often a mirror. And that mirror shows us something we don't want to see because it's us. It shows us our own kind of ugliness.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of get disgusted with yourself to want to make a change. And until you actually look in the mirror and go, dude, you're not as pretty as you think you are. Here's your bank account balance. Here's your net worth. And for a lot of people, they'd rather just not look. I saw one video and this girl said, I don't look at my bank account because I don't need that negative energy in my life. Like, this is your reality. And so, like my friend Dr. John Deloney says, you have to choose reality. We can't live in la la land and make any progress with money. We've got to start with where we're at. And part of that is releasing shame and guilt. There's real baggage and trauma that's associated with this stuff that I don't want to minimize. That might take some therapy and counseling to work through and go, what's at the root of that? Oh my gosh. Yeah, when I grew up, we had a scarcity mentality with money. And so I feel like I'll never have enough. And so we have to get to the root of that and then decide what are the daily steps I can take to make these habits happen that will allow me to reach those goals. It's that simple and it's that hard to undo all of that.
Yeah, it is. And I love that you talk on this is that change happens when the pain of staying the same becomes more painful than making a change. It's like you said, we have to get to a point where it's so bad that we're forced to change. But what you're trying to do and what I'm trying to do is let's start that before that happens so that you don't have to get to that point, right? And the mindset is such a massive part of it. And it's like you said, we have to change our perspective about money and what we see it as. What are some pivotal things that you've done? And of course, joining Ramsey and everything along that journey has been a massive impact. But what are some things that you've done to change your money mindset?
Hmm. One thing is stick to it. Commit to something for at least 90 days before I poo poo it and say that didn't work for me. And one of those was a budget. I was not a budgeter. I'm kind of a nerd and I like an Excel spreadsheet, but the idea of a budget felt like someone ripping my freedom out of my hands and
Yeah.
going, well, this is how you're going to spend. And after doing a budget for 30 days, I kind of screwed it up. I fumbled my way through it. I didn't realize how much I was really spending, which was a good thing. That was the mirror that I was talking about, that truth mirror of when, no, I budget $200 for food, but I spent 500 and I did that consistently. So the other piece of it was actually sticking to it enough to see the progress. And just like with anything in life, when I started playing guitar, I sucked at guitar. The first 6 months, you're just like your fingers hurt, you can't get the rhythm going, you don't know how to strum, you can't hold a chord down. And after 6 months, you go, "Oh, okay, I learned a chord, now I can work on the rhythm." And budgeting and money are the same way. People just think, "Well, I'm the type of person who's just bad with money." That doesn't exist because no one's born good or bad with money. We're just babies, trying to survive. And so at some point you have to go, I'm going to learn the skill of budgeting. That's all it is. It's a skill and then it's a daily choice you make to open the budget, track a transaction and move on with your life. The other piece was getting out of debt and staying out of debt. I mean, it's hard. It's countercultural to get out of debt and stay out of debt. Now, we all feel like, well, there's good debt, there's bad debt. No one wants to have a credit card balance, but we're all fine with a car payment for some reason. And so realizing that debt was a thief and it was stealing not only my paycheck, but it was stealing my joy. Because at the end of the month, I didn't get to keep the money I was working so hard for. I had to send it right back out to Sally Mae and Discover. And at some point, that's going to get tiring. It's going to get old. And so letting go of that and saying, what if I just use my own money instantly to make purchases? And if I don't have the money, I just don't buy it. That was such a weird concept to me that took a little while to get a hold of, to understand that it wasn't worth cash back and rewards and whatever could be on the other side at the risk of paying interest and paying payments for the rest of my life. So that was huge. Whether you're making $35,000 or $350,000, avoiding debt and having all that money to you, it makes a difference. So that was another belief, was getting out of debt and staying out of debt. And the third one was about building wealth. Of just, you know what? I might be the first person in my household to have a positive net worth, to become a net worth millionaire. And it wasn't some really cool aspirational milestone. I'm not trying to like own a private jet. I'm not trying to live like an influencer. I live a very normal life. I still coupon. I still want to get a good deal. It still pains me to spend sometimes. But what I realized was I don't have the excuse anymore of just, well, wealth's not possible for me. And so now I'm shouting on the rooftops to everyone saying, hey, if the average George can do it, who didn't grow up with money, then you can too. I mean, that's your podcast. You can too. That's the whole theme of this book is you can do this. Here's the steps you got to take. Are you willing to do it? And by the way, you know too much to continue on now. So, choose your path with caution.
Absolutely. That was the last chapter of the book. It was essentially saying that it's like you know too much now. Now it's up to you to actually make the change, and it is so important to recognize that. There were so many statistics in your book that honestly blew me away because I've never dealt with that. I never went to college because that was my perspective was why would I get in debt for something that just never made sense to me. I was always trying to find my own way. But 7 out of 10 people live paycheck to paycheck, and the credit card debt is at an all-time high of $1 trillion, which just massively blows me away that we're in this position that so many people can't think long term. Like I was investing in my Roth when I was 18 as soon as I possibly could, and just always thinking, where do I want to be? I always think of the direction that I want to be in instead of the results that I want to have right now.
That's amazing.
What are some practical things that people can do to set themselves up for success in the future and just detach from where we're at so much right now? Because I think that's such a big part of it.
Hmm. Well, the crux of our money plan is the Ramsey 7 baby steps that Dave came up with 30 years ago. And, truthfully, we get flack on that because they go, I can't believe Dave's principles haven't changed in 30
Yeah.
years. Have you seen what's happened with inflation? And well, you need. And so everyone wants to do their own thing, their own way. And the problem is it doesn't work. And what's amazing is that 10 million people have followed this plan and it worked for them because they just committed to it and it's simple. And a lot of people think it's too simple. Get out of debt, stay out of debt, and invest for the future. No, I need something more complicated. We need to find the latest and greatest get rich quick thing because you're not going to be able to make any money from a 401k these days. So there's so much cynicism toward the financial culture, and some of it is warranted when it comes to the debt system. But not enough people are talking about that piece of it, which I unpack in the first 2/3 of the book, is every piece of the system and how this financial industrial complex has led us into this awful, miserable place where we're just stacked with payments, but then complaining that we don't have enough money. And it's like, yeah, well, you have $1,500 going out to lenders. It's a no-brainer. You make good money. We make $100,000, and yet we're still paycheck to paycheck, and it's because of payments more than it is the guy in the White House. So, um, back to your question, talking about the end of the book, talking about these stats, my eyes were open too. Some of these stats I was learning in real time as I was doing the research, and it just was mind-boggling to go 30 years ago, it was weird to even use a credit card. I mean, Burger King had this big thing and people were like, "A credit card for a burger? Are you insane? Who's going to do that?" And look at us now. It's just
Yeah.
been 30 years and we've normalized this culture of debt. And it's happening in America more than anywhere else. You go to any other country and they're confused looking at Americans who drive these super nice luxury cars and these huge homes that we have, like Joshua Fields Milburn says, we got more bathrooms than people in it.
Yeah.
And so we just want more and more and more. It's never enough. And it's not only leading us to be broke, but it's leading us to just feel empty. And that's the worst part of it all is when you're broke, that's one thing. When you're cynical, stressed, anxious, empty, and broke, that's a hopeless place to be. And so our job every day we show up at Ramsey is to just give people a taste of hope and show them it's possible and hope that they take the right next step.
Yeah, it's simple, but it doesn't make it easy. It's just doing what is laid out for you for a long enough period of time. And in the introduction, the first quote was, "When the whole world is running toward the cliff, he who is running the opposite direction appears to have lost his mind." But I love it so much. There were so many quotes from the book that I just loved, man, and I think it's so important because when if you want to get different results than most people are getting, you're going to have to do what most people are not doing. And if 7 out of 10 people are living paycheck to paycheck, you probably don't want to do what most people are doing, right? And so um,
Absolutely.
the long-term vision is something I think is very important. When it comes to a long-term vision, why do you think it's so difficult for people to delay gratification?
Now more than ever, it's harder because we didn't have the distractions we had 30 years ago. I mean, 30 years ago, you only knew what your next door neighbor was doing. Now I know what you're doing in upstate New York, and I know what this celebrity's doing, and we have too much access to information. We have too much access to what everyone's doing around us, and it's causing us to have this FOMO where we all feel like we're not enough because we see everyone else's highlight reel on social media trying to show this facade of how well they're doing. And the truth is, we're all just kind of disconnected, like my friend Dr. John Deloney says. We're all stressed out about money. We all feel like we don't have enough, and no one's really being honest about it. So one thing you can do is just turn down the inputs that are causing you to feel that way. And that takes a level of self-awareness to go, I'm going to unfollow this guy. I don't know why he's just touting this lifestyle that I feel like I'll never have and stuff that I don't even want or need. And that's it's kind of leading to that minimalist life where you go, I don't need all this stuff. I can live a life of simplicity and I can have joy on my terms. But a lot of it is social media for the younger generations, and also feeling like the older generations ruined that for us. They're out of touch. They don't understand. And we're seeing our parents retire kind of broke. And we're like, oh my gosh, like this is all they have is this, they have meager social security and a little tiny pile in their retirement account. That's not going to be enough. And so we feel like we don't have time and we need to find every shortcut possible if we're ever going to retire with dignity. So what that means is if I'm 22, if I don't have a million by the time I'm 28, my life is a failure and I'll never succeed. That's a very toxic mentality. So the one reminder I tell people, especially if you're in your 20s and 30s, you have time. Stop thinking that it has to happen tomorrow. Stop feeling this weird sense of urgency that you've put on yourself to be uber successful, because I guarantee you're going to get there and then it's not going to be enough because you reset the scoreboard every time you get there. And so we've got to start having that long-term vision. And my chapter on wealth is called Wealth is Patience. That's my thesis. There was a lot of things I could say about it, but I just kept going back to the tortoise and the hare of the person who just does the boring, unsexy thing over a long period of time is going to have a better life than the person who was chasing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, hoping it was going to cause them to have this life they never dreamed of.
Yeah, it's that hedonic adaptation. Once you get to a place, it's like the person that makes 200,000 thinks that 300,000 is going to be the thing, and then the person that's making 300,000 thinks that 400,000 is going to be it, and it never ends, right? It's a never ending cycle, and it's funny because you went from negative 40,000 to a net worth millionaire within 10 years, but when did that become long? Like that, I feel like that's a short time. I feel like that in itself, right? Like most people don't do that until they're 50, 60, 70, and you're at it at a short period of time. So I think even changing what your paradigm is of what is a long time will really change the way that you approach things. I know that for you, like I said earlier, is you made about $30,000 in 2016 from just side hustles. What was it about Ramsey that made you come in and say, I'm gonna let go and not see where I can take this side hustle kind of thing going, but I'm gonna go and do this?
So kind of saying, hey, I'm not going to pursue any of this full time. I like my 8 to 5, which
Yeah.
gets poo pooed a lot these days because people feel like, well, time freedom is everything. And the problem with that is a lot of entrepreneurs that I know, they're not working 40 hours a week. They're working 60 hours a week.
Oh
And
my
that's, I
God.
mean, the business owners that call into our show, they have this business and we go, okay, what do you bring home every year? And they're like, well, this year it'll be like $20,000 net profit.
Yeah.
And we're going, man, you could go work flipping burgers and make more than that and be less stressed. Now, some people, it's their passion. They can't think of doing anything else and they'll eventually succeed. And that's the entrepreneur story we all love to hear. But too often we hate on 8 to 5 jobs working for a company because we feel like we have no freedom. But there is deep purpose and impact and mission that can happen within a company. Just go find the one that, speaks to you. Not all companies are evil and not all managers are toxic. That's a narrative that I think needs to change going into this year. And at the same time, there's many people who go, you know what, that's not the path for me. I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be a podcaster. I'm going to start this business over here. And some people are wired for that. And that's an amazing thing. But don't fall for this myth that this is the only path is to ditch the 8 to 5, and go do my own thing. Many people will not succeed at that. And it's going to leave them more burnt out than it's going to leave them fulfilled.
Very true. I definitely think it's a certain kind of person that can do even 80 hours, like whatever that looks like. Most entrepreneurs that I know are working more than the people that are not an entrepreneur, and that's just the truth of it. What are some money habits that you've developed over time? Maybe it's baby steps, maybe it's margin, whatever it looks like. But what are some money habits that people can adapt now so that like we spoke earlier, don't get to a point where they're forced to make a change?
Mm. Well, one is lifestyle creep, I think is the biggest one. And
Yeah.
if you can live on less than you make while making $35,000, and then you continue to live on less than you make while making $60,000, it is amazing how much margin you're going to have to where you never have to go, well, how am I going to ever get a house or how am I going to ever start that business? And then the other thing you don't do is turn to debt. When you have the margin, you become your own bank and you don't need to turn to lenders to leverage debt to make your quote dreams happen. And so living on less than you make is the root principle of our money plan. If you can't do that, this plan isn't going to work for you. And a lot of times people go, well, I can't do that now, so this plan isn't for me. But then I take a look at their expenses and I take a look at their income, and then we see what they can do to make more money. And all of a sudden, you start to shrink the gap and you start to land in the black where you have a little bit of money left over. And that's one of the most empowering, freeing things In fact, tomorrow I'll be doing a budgeting webinar. Of course, this will air later, but I'm going to show people how to use our Every Dollar budgeting app to find that margin. And it's not a nerdy budgeting demo. It's, hey, here's your actual income. Here's your actual expenses. What changes can we make? Because it's not working for you right now. So can we cut a subscription? Can we cut the vacation fund? Can we pause investing so we can get out of debt? Can we go make some more money doing the side hustle, working overtime? For some people, maybe that's getting a whole new job altogether because they're underpaid. And so that, I think, gives people hope and freedom that there's going to be life change on the other side of this that is going to be really positive and help me reach those goals I never thought I would get to.
Yeah. Are there any things that you can think of that are some overlooked ways that people go broke? Like
Mm.
the reason I ask that is I think, credit card debt, we think of getting a car payment, buying a home when you're not prepared for it. Like those are the obvious things that, or at least should be obvious, that we should not lean towards that. But what are some things that are maybe not so obvious that make people go broke?
Well, it all comes down to spending. So that's, no one goes broke by just saving money or by generosity. I've never met someone who's like, man, I make money and I give it all away because I'm so generous and that's why I'm broke. It's the people who are big spenders. And so I developed this smart spender plan that's in the book. And it's 5 questions
Mhm.
that I lay out in the spending and self-control chapter where I just say, hey, ask yourself these 5 questions before you spend. Have some self-awareness. Is this going to really add value to your life? Or is it going to sit in the closet with tags on it?
Yeah.
Number 2, what's your motive? Is it a good one? Because if it's not, let's pause on this purchase. If it's because of retail therapy or boundaries issues or pressures, we've got to say no. That's a word we have to add to our vocabulary. Then there's A for affordability. Is this in my budget? Can I actually afford this in full with cash right now without derailing my financial life? If America answered that one correctly, we would be $0 in debt if we only spent money on things we could afford. Then there's the R for research. This is the one I think most people don't spend the time on because of convenience or laziness. They're not taking the time to say, is this the best option, retailer, and price for this item?
Mm.
Or is it the first thing in my Instagram feed on the ad and I just swiped up and bought because there was some urgency in the marketing that got me to do it? That one, I think, is my biggest way I've saved money over the last 30 years of my life, 34 years, but I wasn't spending when I was a baby yet. And so that's a big one. It's just doing the research, taking the time to pause and, I use one called Honey that helps me find promo codes online. I'll do Google shopping searches to see, okay, this stroller is this much here. If I wait till Black Friday, maybe I can get a deal on that. Let me pause and just put this on hold. And then there's timing. That's the T in smart. And is now the time to buy it? Do I have other financial priorities? Hey, we got to get this car repair done. Now's not the time to go on the vacation. Hey, we have to invest in the Roth IRA, so we're not going to do this upgrade to the house right now. You have to really juggle those priorities and look at opportunity cost. If I spend $5,000 on this, I can't spend $5,000 on this. So if you just ask yourself those 5 questions, I think it will change the way you handle money completely, especially if you do that while using your own money, while using debit cards or cash.
Yeah. Yeah. There's 2 tactics that I've used, and I love all of those because I think every part of it is a necessity. It's not an option. It shouldn't be an option. If I want to buy something, first off, if I can't buy it twice, I'm not buying it once. And if I really, really want something, I'm gonna wait a day to buy it. I'm gonna sleep on it and think, okay, do I still want that thing? Well, it's probably something that is gonna serve my life. It may what in some capacity. Let's say people have the saving down and they're in a position, maybe they have some kind of margin, they're living below their means. What do you think is the best investment vehicle, or where do you feel that people should position their money so that they can set themselves up for success?
Great question. Well, for a lot of people, they have retirement plans through their employer, and that's a great place to go. And I'll tell you the investing strategy that will apply to regardless of what your options are. And it's just these 3 things: match beats Roth beats traditional. And
Mm.
all that means is if you have a match with your employer, let's start there. If it's a 4% match, we're going to invest 4% there. Then we're going to move to all of our Roth options. And that's simply where you use after tax money to invest, but then it grows tax free. And then you can withdraw that money tax free in retirement. So if you have $2 million sitting in a Roth 401k, you have $2 million that Uncle Sam will never touch again, which is a great feeling.
Oh yeah.
And so that's the next thing. And then you move on to traditional options like your traditional 401k, 403b. But for those that maybe are entrepreneurs, they may be missing out on some really great options like a solo 401k, something to look into, A SEP IRA is something to look into for those that are self-employed or contractors. And then the last one is for anyone out there. A Roth IRA is one of the best vehicles to build wealth. And so you can, this year it's 6,500. It's going to keep increasing probably every year incrementally. But it's an amazing vehicle because you have so many options, and you can invest in basically the entire stock market at once with something like a mutual fund or an index fund. And that allows you to own tiny pieces of all of these amazing companies that we're all rooting for to do well. And that alone, when you look at the track record of the S&P 500, for example, 500 largest US companies, it's had a 10 to 12% average annual return over time. People think, well, George, mine didn't get 12% this year. I said over time. Some years it's going to be down 18%. The next year it might be up 28%. But when you average it out, it comes out to 10 to 12%. And so when you start putting those numbers into a compound interest calculator on our website, it's amazing. When you look at, if I put $10,000 in today, 30 years from now, that money is going to be 10x. And that's a very exciting feeling to get you motivated to invest for the future.
Yeah, a statistic from your book, it was you put $10,000, I wanna say it was into the S&P 500, and over 40 years, it ended up being 440,000 or something crazy, and it's so simple. Like, I'm some of the to a lot of people, I'm a very boring investor where I go in S&P 500 or index funds mainly, in my Roth, and I'm just thinking very long term. Like, every single week, I'll put money in there and not even think about it, don't even put any kind of expectation on it and just let it ride, because why put yourself in a position to guess, to maybe see, like you said, it's gonna over time, it is going to succeed. um
Absolutely.
you talk about giving in your book as well, and I'd love to talk about why giving is so important, how it impacts us psychologically, how it impacts us and makes us allow us to make more money. Like, what is the point in giving? Of course it's important, but why is it so important?
Giving is such a paradoxical money principle because if you have the mindset of I want to make money, I want to keep money, I want to save money, then giving is the last thing that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just mentally to go like I made this money and I'm going to give it away, and that's somehow going to benefit me.
Yeah.
And one of the problems is we only think mentally and we forget that we are spiritual, emotional, relational creatures. And one of the reasons people make $300,000 and they're miserable is because they forgot about the giving bone. We've got to work on those generosity muscles. Otherwise, we're going to have a flat tire. Because there's only three things you can do with money. You can spend it, you can save it, you can give it. And spending, we know you can have some nice stuff. Saving is great. We have to invest for the future. That feels good. But giving is one that it's a muscle we have to build. Some of us aren't used to it. But the more you do it, the easier it gets and the more joy you get. And in the book, I outline, my faith background, of course. As a Christian, we believe that tithing is important. And so giving to your local church and that generosity on top of that, I say in the book that God was the greatest giver of all time. The goat is how I say it. The goat. There you go. There's my pun. And so, God gave his only son, Jesus, to die for us so that we could have freedom and salvation. And that to me is one of the most beautiful principles of sacrifice and giving. And we do it as parents. We give to our children. We pour our hearts out. We give to our employer with our time. But yet when it comes to our money, we have this clenched fist. And if you clench your fist right now, you'll feel the tendons and the joints, everything's just tensed up. It doesn't feel good. And when you just release, you just live a better life with open hands. More can flow to you, more can flow from you. And I found the most fun I can ever have with money is giving. Spending is very temporary. That joy you get, it lasts for a second. Investing, there's even less joy because it's so far away that it doesn't even feel real. But giving, man, when you can see that person smile on the other side, or even if it's anonymous, that joy sticks with you. It changes your spirit. You have a better posture after you give. And so I encourage everyone, whether they have a faith background or not, to make giving a priority in their budget. And when you do our every dollar budget, you'll notice giving we put at the very top. Because I want to remind myself that, and this is another controversial countercultural principle, but I believe that I'm a steward of my money, that this money was entrusted to me. Every dollar that comes in, yes, I played a role in making it and getting it, but man, it's not really mine. And so if I get to keep 90% of it and I get to give 10% away, that's a good life. And it's a good way to think about money in terms of who owns it. And so I think it's very freeing, and I want people to give to things they're passionate about. Don't give, the Bible says God loves a cheerful giver. And so if you don't do it with a smile and you're like a miserly Scrooge as you hand over the change, then don't give it all, because it doesn't make the person feel good. They feel guilty, and it's a weird pity give, and you don't feel good after that. And so find the things that light you up, that if you gave $100 to, it would make your day. And if you don't have anything like that in your life, I'm going to guess that you're kind of miserable, that you don't have joy, that you may not even realize that you're miserable until you start giving and you go, man, I've been missing out on this beautiful, beautiful side of money that I did not know existed.
Yeah, I'm so grateful it was a chapter in your book because I can't press upon that enough. One of my first mentors spoke to me that if you're holding on to money so tightly, then how are you ever going to be able to receive it? It's like you said, it's like the when you're holding on to it so tight, you don't allow yourself to have an abundant perspective on money. When you're not giving, you're seeing money as a scarce resource when it's being printed every single day. Like you have an opportunity, you either have to make more money or spend less, and it really, really is that simple. A lot of it comes down to mindset, and I think it's such an important part. I want to take up another quote from your book because like I said, so many resonated with me. And it was that before you build wealth, before you build and give, you have to reframe the way that you look at money. Money is just a means to an end, like a brick that you can either build a home or break a window. I'm curious, how much of a role does mindset play in making money or building wealth?
I mean, I don't want to over exaggerate, but mindset is everything. I mean, it's the starting point. And the way I talk about that in the book is paradigm shift. That paradigm shift is so difficult to make, but it's one of the most important things you can make. If you don't have that paradigm shift and that mindset shift about money and about your future, you're not going to do anything about it. And so you can't just make the habit without changing your mindset. It has to start with the mindset. And again, for a lot of people, there may be trauma and shame and guilt and baggage that we have to grapple with before we can change the mindset. We have to move from scarcity mindset to abundance mindset. That's one of the biggest issues people have with money, is that they hang on to it so tightly because they've never had it. And even once they do have it, they feel like it could all go away tomorrow, so I still have to hang on to it so tightly. But the people that have the most joy with money, the people that have the most money, have an abundance mindset. Their mindset is, well, I can just go make more money. That was Dave Ramsey's entire philosophy. Even after he went broke, the man knew how to just go to work and go make money. And that, to me, is a telltale sign that you'll never really fail if you have that kind of mindset. That it's not just some finite pie, and if that person gets more of it, then that means less for me. No, it's an infinite pie out there. But that mindset shift is one of the most difficult to make, and that's why I spent 2/3 of the book unpacking this debt system to help change your paradigm around, credit cards, student loans, car loans, auto loan, you name it. I cut mortgages, investing traps. If I can change your paradigm around that, then there's hope that we can then go do this Ramsey plan, that we can then go create these habits. But without that paradigm shift, you're out to sea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you said, or something that I say often is that belief drives behavior. If we don't have the belief, then our behavior is going to align with the belief that we do have. And that paradigm shift is something that's it's a necessity. It is an absolute necessity. There's one last question I ask every single guest, and it brings in the mission behind this podcast. And the question to you is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
Ooh, man, that cuts deep.
That's my
Okay, I'm gonna go from this angle because I'm a new parent, and so that's top of mind. I've got a 2.5-month-old, and so my belief that I've been having to let go of is that I can control everything. Because I know, the Ramsey plan is like, well, you can control you, the guy in the mirror, your money. But in my mind, I was like, well, I can control my schedule and this baby and what's going to happen this weekend. And there's been so many left field turns and curveballs as a new parent, things that, it's one of the hardest seasons of our life personally, the things that we've been going through and family health issues. And so there's just this letting go of, I can't call the shots. I love to be type A and have the schedule and have the spreadsheet, but life doesn't work out like that. And so just letting go and freeing myself from carrying that burden every day is a very difficult thing, because I'm the guy who wants to be the savior for that next person and help. Man, I can go help that person. Letting go and just saying, I can't help everyone. I can't control everything. I can't dictate what happens tomorrow with my life. I can only dictate my response to it, how I emotionally respond, how I tactically respond. And that has been a very difficult, challenging, but also beautiful lesson that I'm continuously learning.
It's amazing, man, and massive congratulations again on just the book, the child, everything that you're doing, man. It's profound to say. Of course, all of your links will be in the show notes, but is there anywhere that you want to point to the audience?
I love connecting with folks that listen to this show, so you can always reach out to me at George Kamel with a K on Instagram or on X. I don't know if people are still hanging out there. I know you are, so at least we'll
Yeah.
have one person there. But love to connect with you guys. Let me know your thoughts on this, and of course, your support for a first-time author would mean everything. The book's on pre-sale through January 15th, and you get audiobook, ebook, so many goodies with that bonus, including 3 months of our Every Dollar Premium budgeting tool. And so I encourage people to check that out because I truly think it's a paradigm shift that is ripe for 2024 as we go into a year where people are feeling more hopeless and more cynical than ever. I hope I can be a beacon of light and laughter and knowledge for folks out there.